Now we return to the southwest of England, and let's just consider for a moment the difference between the fertile fields of Britain and the dry, arid deserts of the Middle East, and how attractive those fields in the islands of the northwest would have been to the people of Palestine as a permanent home to move to. In around 10 to 20 AD, the wealth of Britain in minerals, especially tin, had been well known to the Phoenicians for many hundreds of years. There's been tin mining in Cornwall for literally thousands of years. Behind me is Carn Glus. Minerals and metals, especially tin from West Cornwall, had been sold widely throughout Europe, and particularly to the Roman Empire. And it's said that the port of Penzance, port of the saints, was well known to one Joseph of Arimathea, who was responsible for the procurement of all the metals which the Roman army needed, and he's believed to have been a regular visitor. St. Michael's Mount, behind me, was a major tin trading centre about 2,000 years ago. And students of history will know that 2,000 years ago, in 55 BC to be precise, Julius Caesar invaded Britain, and 55 years later, a certain baby was born in Bethlehem. Joseph of Arimathea was the uncle of Mary, the mother of Jesus. When his father died when Jesus was in his early teens, Joseph of Arimathea became his guardian. And it is believed that on many of his journeys to the southwest of England, that Joseph of Arimathea brought Jesus with him when Joseph came to purchase the tin for the Roman Empire from the tin miners in Cornwall. These were the days when the Romans invaded and conquered Britain and laid down the Roman roads, the days when Boadicea, the queen of the Iceni in East Anglia, rose up against the Romans. This all happened in about AD 60. The British flocked to join Boadicea's army as she travelled south, and she cleared the Romans out of Colchester, London and St Albans and began to march north. But the Roman commander regrouped his forces, and although he was heavily outnumbered, his superior weaponry and discipline enabled him to defeat the Britons at the Battle of Watling Street, where Boadicea and her daughters lost their lives. Many other Britons joined in the uprising. Boadicea was supported by King Caractacus here on the slopes of Caer Caradoc in Shropshire. But Caractacus came off slightly better than Boadicea. He was taken captive and spent the rest of his life as a prisoner in Rome. A major contributor to Boadicea's temporary success was the fact that all available Roman legions had orders to go to Anglesey, where the Druids, who were the only challengers to Roman authority at that time, had their headquarters, and when their complete and ruthless destruction had been achieved, the Roman legions could turn their attention to defeating the more temporary challenge of the Iceni, which they did in 61 AD equally ruthlessly and destructively. Boadicea's rebellion was one of the first demonstrations by the British people at a national level that we British are very happy to welcome our neighbours as trading partners, but we do not take kindly to anybody invading these shores or trying to tell us how to govern our nation. The English writer G.K. Chesterton described the Anglo-Saxons as having a sense of fairness gene amongst their DNA, an essential characteristic of being British. The English word fair doesn't exist in other European languages. There's just and there's right, but fair doesn't depend on the law. It depends on what is reasonable and equitable. And British government and British law have been developing slowly, step by step, for over 1,000 years, in a way that encompasses and builds on that essential fairness. The British people could see the advantages of signing up to these principles and expecting everybody else to sign up to them as well. And they were taught, and people knew that they would be punished if they stepped beyond what they knew to be the acceptable limits of those guiding principles and legal structures. There was a sense of outrage about anyone being unfair within the community, to the extent that the community could be relied upon to police them. It laid foundations which the British people could sign up to by consent because they had a say in forming the legislation. And they would be called upon many times to defend to the death those hard-won freedoms, as they are still being called upon to defend them now. And many have found inspiration from the example of courage and patriotism that Boadicea gave us 2,000 years ago. It was over 3,500 years ago that the Israelite nations first set out the principles of the Ten Commandments that were to become the foundation of an ever-developing set of legal and administrative governmental structures in Britain, which have grown and continue to grow out of this basic, instinctive British sense of fairness, which Alfred the Great was the first to write into the English Constitution when he translated the 3 chapters of Exodus into English and made them the law of the land.